This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. 2017 has been a great year for board games. I can't believe it's already over, but it's time to do my top 10. Earlier this week, I did my best games of the year, which were different categories. If you missed that, you can click the link below. But now we're going to actually do just the top 10, so let's get started.
Number 10.
Number 10 is a party game from Nabu Games called Crosstalk. Now this game is like Password on steroids. There's two teams and there's a clue giver on each team. The clue giver is trying to give a clue to let their team get it. However, the twist is after they give a clue, the other team gets to guess what it possibly is. And both teams are trying to figure out the same word. Another twist is the clue giver gets to write a private clue that only their team gets to see before they start that round to give them some different context or to try to push this in a different direction. So when they give the clue, it gives some misdirection to the other team, but their team might be able to link some things together. It is super clever, very streamlined, easy to teach, and there's also an extra board you can add in for advanced play, which really gamifies the games that gamers are gonna love. You can do some bluffing, you could link other teams' answers or clues to something that you've said earlier, lots of different things. Fantastic party game, fantastic game in general. One of the most underrated games this year for sure. That's Crosstalk from Nabu Games.
Number 9.
Now this one caused a lot of hoopla at Gen Con, and some of the reviewers that covered it right before Gen Con got a lot of backlash as to creating false hype. Obviously it wasn't false, because if you saw the booth at Renegade, this place was gangbusters at Gen Con, and it's, I think, still to this point, was rightfully so, because the game is excellent, and that is Clank in space. And most people are like, oh, it's just Clank in space. Why would I get excited about that? You're wrong. This essentially is Clank 2.0. Not only is it in space, not only did they use interesting ways to call back other science fiction movies on the cards, but they've taken Clank and done some things with the mechanisms to make it even better than the original. So this isn't just Clank with the new skin. This really is Clank 2.0 with the new bounty cubes that hurt everybody and the different ways that things work. Even getting knocked out towards the end is it. If you haven't even played Clank, I'm not a big fan of deck builders. This is one of my favorite deck builders of all time, because not only are you building your deck to do certain things, but you're moving around the board, and it has that press your luck racing element where you're going off to get this artifact. The further you go into the space pod, the better points it's going to give you, but then the further you are to get out, and if you don't get out in time, you're probably going to die. So this is a fantastic deck building game. So definitely one of my favorite games of the year, and I think it did deserve the buzz it got at Gen Con.
Number 8.
Next is a beautiful dice drafting game from Floodgate Games called Sagrada. In this game, you're going to be drafting dice. These dice are going to be different colors, and you're going to be placing them on your own board, but you're going to follow some certain rules. Some places you can only put certain colors. Some places you can only put certain numbers, and you can never have the same number or color orthogonally adjacent to the same one. But there's ways to manipulate those rules by using tools. So you can change things and swap dice and re-roll dice and do different things, and those change each game. Also, you all have a secret goal at the beginning of the game that you're working towards throughout the game. This is a fantastic streamlined game. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play. It's beautiful. Every game you can put a different board in your little window, so the game's going to feel very different. The tools make it feel very different. So overall, this is a fantastic, if you like drafting at all, this game is the most streamlined, awesome drafting game that came out this year, period. And that is Sagrada.
Number 7.
Next is a Tetris-style puzzle game called Barren Park. Now in this game, you're building your own bear park. You're going to be sort of drafting different tiles, placing them on your board, and as you cover different things, that will unlock other tiles that you can then get. Now depending on what you cover, you might be getting a smaller tile, a medium-sized tile, or these large bulldozer tiles. You might even be getting tiles to help you construct a new piece of land, which will allow you to continue to build out. There's also an advanced game where every game, the 3 different goals that you're going for are different, and the faster you get to them, the more points you get. And even in the regular game, the faster you get to a lot of these tiles, the more points they're worth. And you're trying to finish your board quicker. It's sort of a racing game, but you're also trying to strategically figure out the best way to fit these in. If you like puzzly Tetris style games, this is actually my favorite of all of them that have come out over the last few years, and that's Barren Park.
Number 6.
This next one is a train stock market game that's played in about an hour called Whistle Stop. This is from Bezier Games. Now this game, I'm not usually huge into like the 18xx games where you're putting the railroads down and buying stocks and doing this and that, but this sort of takes that idea and puts it down to an hour and 15 minutes tops. And this game has a ton of great choices. Now you may be familiar with a game called Suro. This is a sort of a family style game where you're putting these tiles and they're zigzagging all over the place. And this has that with the rails. It's really cool because you're laying tiles. It's very puzzly. You're trying to figure out which tile should I lay to move one of my many trains out to gather some goods. And once you've got those goods with any other train, you can go deliver them. Sometimes you're delivering them all the way to the end of the board. You're rushing there to turn in the goods for a lot of points and then also get the best bonus because the bonuses are better the faster you get there. Or you might want to take your time, go around, gather some stocks because there's huge points and majorities for stocks. Plus there's this aspect of you have tiles in your hand, other people don't know what they are. You can hold them towards the end, throw down some stocks, get them right at the end, overthrow some people they didn't see coming. There's a lot of depth here. It's a pretty easy game to play, but it has this sort of spatial element, it has a puzzly element, has a stock market majority element, and it's pick up and deliver, which I typically don't like, but this game knocked it out of the park. In addition to that, there's different upgrades that you can buy. They're different each game, and you can buy them, and it upgrades and gives you a special ability, but others can also upgrade and get it back from you by paying you some goods. There's just a lot of great things here, and that's Whistle Stop from Bezier Games.
Number 5.
This next one is a sort of partyish game. It's for 2 players or more. It's called Codenames Duet. Now this, in my opinion, was an improvement, even though it's very different, on the original Codenames, which I loved and gave a 10. This is even better because you can play it with 2 players, which you couldn't play with the regular Codename in a very good manner. You could play it, but it was like a variant that didn't work that well. This 2-player version is amazing, but you can also play it well with more than 2. I often, actually probably even more often than not, play this with more than 2 players, but I can play with 2. And the best part about this is a deductive element that's brought into this game, where there's this code key where you know how many are good on one side, how many good are on the other side. There's 3 assassins. You know what those are on each side, theoretically. And as the game goes on, you get towards the end, you can try to deduce and figure out, okay, I know that this was mine, this was green, so that means this one must be that. And bringing in that deductive element really took this off the charts for me. Also, the fact that they placed a campaign in this game where you can make the game easier and harder in different ways. It makes you play the game differently at different cities you go to. Knocked it out of the park here. Codenames Duet, one of the best of the year.
Number 4.
This is Pandemic Legacy Season 2. Now, Season 1 I liked great, it was fine, but it didn't make any of my year-end lists. And why is that? Well, Season 1, it still felt like Pandemic to me and I really enjoyed it, but this one is different. This one takes Pandemic, puts it on its head, where the mechanisms are kind of like Pandemic in reverse, where you're actually trying to add cubes to places so they don't run out and then get plague cubes. Also, this game is more about exploration than it is about going around a different spot you can already see and exploring the world and exploring the different countries and exploring the story of this as things go is why this made this list. Also, the amount of strategy in this game that is bookend on this game. Before you start the game and after you start the game, each game, there's a good amount of strategy trying to figure out where should we place our cubes before we start. Or at the end, how do we spend our currency? How do we level up our characters? Plus, you also have the obvious, awesome part of the legacy aspect of pulling boxes out, pulling new pieces out. I mean, that speaks for itself. Rob Davio and Matt Leacock do an excellent job here. But the game itself is just super solid, and I like it a lot better than the first one, and these are all the reasons it made this list so high.
Number 3.
All right, we're in the top 3 now. This is Dragon Castle from Horrible Games, and it's done by CMON is bringing it to North America first quarter. This is a game that is based upon the solo computer version of Mahjong. So it's based upon a classic where you're grabbing these interesting looking tiles that are identical, placing them on your own board, building your own castle. And when you get enough orthogonally that are the same color, you can flip them over, put a shrine on them, and then you can start building on that level, and then building on that level. And you're building this three-dimensional castle, which is absolutely awesome. Now, in addition to that, there's so much more going on in this game than it originally appears. You've got the drafting strategy of trying to take things that your opponents want. You have this element of once the top level is gone, it brings up a whole bunch of new choices, and you're trying to manipulate the draft to be able to do that, because you can take 1 or 2 tiles depending on what you do on your turn. Manipulating that to try to get the tiles in the opportunities that you want is another layer of depth. Some tiles you can put more than 1 shrine on when you consolidate them, so having the right amount of shrines. Plus, there's so many different ways to start the game. There's different ways and configurations to set it up. For each player count, they gave a ton of these. Also, each game is going to be a different special ability and a different way to score. That's different each game. That's awesome. So the ease of getting into it, the low barrier of entry, the amount of depth both from a drafting perspective and a spatial perspective, the replayability and the different ways of setting it up, the ways of scoring, just it goes on and on. This game is a modern day classic that I think I'll be playing for the rest of my life, really, because it's just so fun. It's peaceful, yet it really makes your brain think hard. The components are awesome, and I can just imagine they might even be able to expand this further, but who knows? The game is amazing. It won my family game of the year, and that's why it's so high on this list. That's Dragon Castle.
Number 2.
Now this next one's really going to surprise people, because for a lot of you it's going to sound like it's coming from left field, and quite honestly for a lot of you it is, because this is actually a mass market game making my number 2 game of the year. This is called Drop Mix. Now this is a game that was done by the same people that did the Rock Band video game. This is called, they are called Harmonix, and this is an analog card game that takes music technology and blends it together. Now myself, you've seen me do saxophone serenades, I'm a musician, I love music. This is like part toy, part game. Each of these cards has an RFID chip on it. There's 3 ways to play the game. You can do freestyle mode, and you can just play these different cards from the different decks that are different genres of music, and it might play the piano piece from I Will Survive, and then the bass part from It's Tricky from Run DMC, to, Call Me Maybe, the strings. You're playing all these different pieces of music together, and it's mashing them up perfectly. It's changing the keys, the tempos, and just from a technology standpoint, which is why this game won my Innovative Game of the Year, it is mind-blowing what it does with the music. Now the game itself, other than the freestyle mode, there's 2 ways to play. You've got a cooperative party mode where people are trying to play cards with a certain color and a certain volume level in a certain spot as fast as they can. It's more fun than it sounds for sure, just the game part. And then there's a clash mode where it's 1 versus 1, 2 versus 1, or 2 versus 2, where you're more strategically and more cerebrally trying to play cards to get to 21 points first. Now the game itself, if you stripped all of the music and all the technology out of this game, it would probably be a 6.5, maybe approaching a 7. But when you add the technology, the whole experience of this game is absolutely mind-blowing. The game comes with 4 decks of cards with different genres of music. I've bought every other one possible. There's like 10 other ones you can get. Some of them are exclusives at certain stores. The idea that this game is infinitely replayable, because as you're playing these cards, it's getting different mixes and different mashups, and you can actually take these playlists that you're mixing and save them and share them with friends. It's just unbelievable. The whole presentation, the whole experience of playing this game, making songs as you're playing these games is absolutely amazing. Now don't get me wrong, don't think I haven't tried to play Hanabi and a couple other like card games using this system, because I have, and you can actually make it work. So I'm sure that like if this gets wind in the hobby market, you're going to be seeing designer variants all over the place for this, and I think that's cool. But the game itself is fine, but you add that technology in and it is literally mind-blowing of what this does, and it's so fun. Yes, the game is rather light. The strategic one can be even more strategy driven, because you can actually build your own deck. They have a deck builder that you can make sure it's not too powerful. So there is some strategy there. This isn't just mass market crap game with technology. It actually is a decent game, and then you put the technology on top of it, and it makes it absolutely unbelievable. My number 2, Drop Mix.
Number 1.
All right, game of the year, my number 1. I think this is going to surprise a lot of you, because I often talk about depth to complexity ratio, streamlined. 1 hour is my sweet spot. 90 minutes, maybe. If it's more than 90 minutes, it has to be infinitely better. My number 1 game of the year is The Seventh Continent, which is a grandiose, humongous game where even just the first scenario takes 20 plus hours to finish. So why is this in my game of the year? This game is the best exploration game I've ever played. It is probably the most immersive game I've ever played. That could be argued, but it's very immersive. It's cooperative, which I typically like. It's got a cool theme where you're going around and exploring different things. And it really brings me back to my childhood of choose your own adventure books. I used to read those all the time as a kid. Hey, you want to do this? Go to this page. You want to do this? Go to this page. This has a lot of those in there where you're deciding what to do and different cards will come out depending on what you do and different things will happen. You're working together. You're finding new items. You're crafting items. You're combining items. It has a very interesting timing element of when the game ends. And to do different things, there's a statistic around how many cards you need to pull in order to possibly pass a challenge. But that's also the clock for the game. So you're trying to cut corners where you can, but you want to succeed in the quests. And then each of those times you do that, you get to keep one of those cards, which levels you up. It is a brilliant, the game is quite streamlined actually. The mechanics are not overbearing, but there's so much thought put into this. So many little things here and there, and just the vast hugeness of this world to explore is crazy. Now this game really reminds me a lot of Time Stories, without rolling dice and without all the fiddly rules that they continue to get wrong. Time Stories was my game of the year a few years ago. This game has essentially replaced that for me. It's because it has that exploration element, the same feelings I would get, the same experience sharing what we've explored together without the downfall of the things I didn't like about that game. So overall, and this game is huge. I'm glad it has a save system. I mean, our last play session for this lasted 7 hours without a break. We didn't even eat. I mean, it's crazy. It's like Vegas in a box where you just open it up, you start playing, and you cannot believe how fast the time has gone. So that's why it's my game of the year. It just takes you out of a world, puts you in a new world, and just does so many things from a gamer perspective, so well yet elegant, that you don't even realize some of the mechanisms are there. Game of the year, Seventh Continent. Well, I hope you enjoyed my top 10 of the year. I've placed links in the description of all the games I've talked about down below. If you're new to my channel, feel free to subscribe. I typically put out 2 to 3 reviews a week, and I also do Rule Schools, which teaches you how to play games so that you don't have to learn them yourself. I also cover some Kickstarter games, and I do 2-minute reviews as well to allow you to see if you like a game before you want to spend more time watching reviews. This has been the Game Boy Geek, helping you find and enjoy the next board game you'll love.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.